Welcome to Zen in the Art of Chimney Maintenance. This is a little presentation I put together for the National Chimney Sweep Guild Convention this year in 2021. The first thing we need to do is a disclaimer, of course. I hope it won't be pages long. The following presentation is my opinion only, and you should feel free to disregard and ignore any part of this presentation. If you use anything I say, you do so at your own risk, because you are the captain of your destiny. The title of this presentation, Zen in the Art of Chimney Maintenance, is of course taken from the book Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which was taken from the book Zen in the Art of Archery. The odd thing is, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance was really not about Zen. It was about one man's struggle for a period of time. And I guess in reality, the following presentation is about my journey as a chimney sweep for the last 38 years, even though there is a good bit of Zen in it. I hope you enjoy. But be warned that one of the few things I do well is stir the pot. This seminar is mostly about me and the secrets I've learned over the last 38 years of sweeping, and sadly, or with humor, how long it took me to actually get them. But first, what I think will be helpful is if you know where I come from and how I got here. I was born and raised here in South Carolina on a farm down in Edgefield County. That's Uncle Jerry, who ran my family's peach stand every summer. And my earliest and fondest memory is of sitting on his lap and him telling me stories about all the critters on Rabbit Hill. I wanted to make a quote from the movie with Steve Martin, The Jerk, but my wife says it's too politically incorrect these days. So I'll have to go with this one, which is another one of my favorite childhood pictures and says a lot about me even now later in life. That little kid in the very back with his head kind of cocked to the side is me in first grade. One of the amazing things is my first grade teacher was my grandmother. There's me. And there's my grandmother, Miss Mac Herlong. We called her Nanny, but I think I had to call her Miss Mac in the classroom. Just a few years later, I was in high school. And I have to honestly say the only thing I remember enjoying about high school was actually creating a gang. And it was an interesting experience, and I'm still friends with most of the folks that were in it. This picture was actually taken near the end of our reign of terror and is kind of interesting and is also one of my favorite photographs. I'm actually the guy in the middle. There's me, and I have to explain the sign. We actually didn't smoke dope back then. I stole the garden club sign from off the side of the road and modified it. It is interesting what happened to all of us over time and what we became. Some days it's just fun to think back and realize how silly and ridiculous we were. My senior year in high school, I was determined to stop getting educated. I did not want to go to college, but my mother made me take the SATs, and for some weird reason I did really well on them and got accepted to one of the two colleges I sent that information to. Unfortunately, then my mother insisted that I go to that college. We did finally make an agreement that I only had to go to college for 1 year and then we would rethink it. And my first year was spent down in Charleston at the Citadel. It was rough. What I learned the 9 months I was at the Citadel was that I liked my hair cut short, to polish brass and shoes, and I also learned a secret, at least that's the way I saw it and was taught it in the military, that it's really not about politics and patriotism. When it really hits hard and you're up against the wall, the only thing that matters is the guy beside you and your group. Nothing else is important except your buddies. If you're interested in learning about the Citadel and possibly what I went through, then I would suggest you read Pat Conroy's book, The Lords of Discipline. I read it about 30 years after I had been there, and I can honestly say I didn't sleep for more than 2 hours a night for the next week. After 1 year at the Citadel, I did continue my higher education in more ways than one. I attended Tri-County Tech in Pendleton, South Carolina, which is just south of Clemson. And after about 2 years of going there, by the way, it took me 3 years to get a 2-year degree, I joined student government and actually became head of student publications. Our Student Government Association, our small group, we actually called ourselves T Delta 9. That was our fraternity. I got two things out of going to Tri-County Tech that I recall. First is my wife of the last 39 years. Secondly, an interesting thing happened because I was in charge of student publications and I published some things that the very conservative administration did not like, that later on they decided to respond to a bulletin by the FBI that was looking for a domestic terrorist, and they gave the FBI my name. That's Captain Bloom with a beard. I actually had a beard before it became popular. This is the magazine I published at the end of that school year that got me in so much trouble. The guy on the left was Mel Thomas, sometimes known as Melvis, one of the neatest and coolest people I ever met, and one of my regrets in life is never being able to get over to see him where he ended up. He actually wrote a New York Times bestseller, Zen and the Art of Recovery, by the way. I don't know why I didn't mention that earlier. My wife and I are actually proudly mentioned in his dedication in the front of that book. Mel actually ended up over in Berkeley, California as a Zen Buddhist monk. He's gone now, but I look forward to meeting him again. I became one of the 2,463 people the FBI checked on and interviewed looking for the Unabomber. I'm not making this up. So that's my history. Um, we're going to transition back to chimney sweeping and chimney maintenance and such. This is actually a picture of me, I believe, in 2003 at the Southeast Convention in Panama City. You see, sometimes you just can't let go of stuff. But anyway, let's get on with my history and chimney sweeping and all that kind of stuff. The guy pictured on the left is Bob Driggers, who was the inventor of the original insert puller. He started the company I own, the Mary Sweep, in 1979, and after about 3 years and being fairly good at selling the insert puller through Copperfield, he decided he didn't want to be a chimney sweep anymore. He wanted to be an inventor. And so he was looking to sell his business, and it just so happens that my wife, because my wife and I were friends of his and his wife's, my wife was in between jobs, and so she rode with Bob for 2 months training to be a chimney sweep. Now, the interesting thing is, the night we were headed over to Bob and Libby's house for her to buy the business, she informed me that she wasn't going to buy Bob's business, that I was. And for some strange and convoluted reason, I agreed to it. Oh, the guy on the right is John Stevenson, and we'll talk more about him a little bit later. Just for kicks, the picture on the left is, of course, myself and my wife on our wedding day in 1982, rather skinny and young. I remember that I bought those pants just to get married in. Isn't that funny? And then that other picture on the right is one of my favorite ones of myself and my wife. We're had chartered a sailboat somewhere south, and we're hanging out lower than the USA. John Stevenson, back in 1983 in the mid 80s, was a chimney sweep just northeast of Greenville, South Carolina, up in Tryon, and he actually taught me most of what I knew back then about sweeping chimneys and repair and stuff. Now, I have to say, and here's one of the secrets I'm going to talk about, is just to pick on John a little bit. He gave me the absolute worst advice in chimney sweeping I think I'd ever heard. About the first day we were out, he said to paint the back storage area of my vehicle black so that you couldn't see all the soot. That was really a crazy suggestion. I don't think I ever did it. And later on, I learned to do the exact opposite. This is what the back of my current van looks like when all the chimney sweeping equipment like the vac and the toolbox and the buckets of mortar and the rain caps and all that kind of stuff is taken out. And you can see that what I actually do is wherever I can, I paint it white. I actually take everything out, clean it out, and paint it at least once a year. Now, how you clean out the back of a van after you've cleaned and kind of washed it a little bit is you open it all up and you take a leaf blower from the side and you go through there and you just blow all the dust out. I also think you ought to notice that there's a storage area under the roof. That is the most wasted space in any van, is the ceiling. Cleaning the back of the van, I'd say, was 33 years for me to learn how to do that well. The storage area under the ceiling, I probably figured out after about 25 years. Another thing that happened when I ended up buying the Mary Sweep in 1983 was my wife insisted that I join both the National Chimney Sweep Guild and the South Carolina Chimney Sweep Guild. This is a cool picture from probably about 1985, maybe 86, of a bunch of chimney sweeps here in South Carolina getting ready to do a seminar on how to line a fireplace chimney. In doing what I hope is the final review of this presentation, I looked at this picture and saw something in it that just shows how dangerous our work can be. Look over on the right at the ladder and the roof just at the ladder's edge. That drop cord should not be where it is. If you step off that ladder and step on the drop cord, you're going to roll it and fall down, and that's the worst place in the world you want to try to fall. Somebody should have seen that and fixed that. Probably took me about 6 or 8 years to learn that one. That's a young skinny me in the early 80s standing on top of an industrial stack in downtown Greenville cleaning an oil furnace flue. I think it was a big oil boiler. It was so big that I ended up crawling inside the thing to clean the oil soot inside of it. My first work van, I'll tell you what, that was a new age time, hippy dippy, counterculture to a degree. I actually painted that van myself. I'm still kind of proud of that. We're going to talk about vans a little bit more in a little while, but I do have to say, and you can't really see it that well, that I actually painted something on the bottom right of the rear bumper that we will talk about later on in this presentation. Another thing I did in 1984, maybe 1985, somewhere right at the very beginning, is I got certified by the National Chimney Sweep Guild. That's right. Way back then, that's who certified chimney sweeps. Actually, that first South Carolina Chimney Sweep Guild meeting I went to down in Columbia had a seminar on how to drop a liner down to a wood stove insert with Z-Flex. I honestly was not that impressed because one of the benefits of Z-Flex was that when you had a little bit extra sticking out of the top of the chimney, you could just pull out your pocket knife and cut that excess off. Here's a picture of me back then, about 1985, with a piece of Ventnox liner, which for young people who don't know this, was about twice as thick and not nearly as flexible as the current stuff. One of the things I'm reminded of is how many liners I put in chimneys for wood stove inserts, and I'm thinking of a quote from a Jimmy Buffett song where he said, "I made enough money to buy Miami, but I pissed it away so fast." And believe me, it's very true. But you know, it was never meant to last. Um, Still dropping liners in 2005 and up until about 20, yeah, I stopped in 2019, and that's a whole different story we'll get to in a little while. I do remember at some South Carolina Chimney Sweep Guild meeting, maybe in the early, I'm trying to think, 1995 maybe or so, Bill Klein said that he had heard a rumor that Farm Bureau Insurance, who was recommending that their customers have their chimneys inspected, they were telling folks in the upstate not to call either Bill or myself, because if the customer had a wood stove insert, we were just going to tell them they needed a liner. And the interesting thing is, they were right about that. And think about where we are nowadays with wood stove inserts. If you put one in a fireplace, you just about got to have a liner. I mean, I can't imagine not doing a full liner from the top of the stove all the way out. That's a picture of my dog and a customer's dog and my current van with I believe, a rectangle flex liner for a brand new wood stove insert installation. Take a little break from wood stoves and have another little thing that I want to explain, and that is, if you don't get anything out of this little presentation other than what I'm fixing to say, this is the most important thing. I really don't know anything about business. I've just kind of struggled along. If you want to learn how to improve your business, how it should run, how to grow, you need to talk to Jerry Eisenhower. He is the mentor of chimney sweeps, and him and his organization can help you out a whole lot. Right when COVID started, I took one of Jerry's groundhogs, Chucky, and ended up putting a mask and some gloves on him and a parachute and putting it out in front of my house for whatever reason, just to be contrary. And I think Jerry appreciated it. I sent him a picture of it. That was a commercial for Jerry, because he deserves it. Now we're going to take a little brief pause and go to something else, which is bad chimneys I've seen over the last while. Not a whole lot of them that I will show, but this is one from a long time ago that I went to. I had actually put that full-size Jelco cover on this chimney, and about a month or three later, they had a slight lightning strike that did a little damage to the chimney. And we'll look at about 2 other little problems I've seen. This is me standing on top of a chimney looking down a flue. The customer called me because the fireplace he had had repaired about a year before smoked now. Seems he had a chimney fire and the insurance company sent a company out to reline the chimney. And this is the job they did. This is, of course, the lower part of the relined chimney. And one of the mysteries is I can't figure out how in the world they got the J-bolts in, because I could not see how the damper housing or the back of the firebox had been cut out, and it was a standard 34 by about 6.5 inch damper opening. Must have been one more skinny dude that went up in there and put those J-bolts in. Anyway, I'm still amazed that anybody would do something like this. Both pictures side by side is all it is. Here is a gas hot water installation I looked at 2 or 3 years ago for a realty inspection, where the hood for the gas hot water heater was higher than the connection to the chimney, and so what they did was they took flexible aluminum pipe and ran it from the hood up between the floor joists and then around and back around and down and into the breech of the chimney. Now we'll go back to work vans. These are my 4 vans I've had over the years. I really don't have a picture of the Ford Ranger pickup truck with a cover that I used temporarily when the one in the bottom left was out of commission. It wasn't a pleasure to have to drive that little critter around with everything I could possibly get in it. Anyway, before we go to the secrets I've found about a work van, let's go to a very important subject. I was riding back from Orlando, the convention a couple years ago, with Ronnie and Renee Brigman, and we stopped to have a bite to eat, and this van was parked in the parking lot. Luckily, we never saw the guy that actually drove it and does the work. This was one of the most amazing things we've seen in vans in years, ever. It's just kind of hard to imagine that somebody would actually do this. I do have to tell you that my wife was a psychotherapist for over 40-something years, and a little bit of it rubbed off on me, and I can absolutely guarantee you one thing. And that thing is, this guy is off of his meds. Two little humorous things, I hope. One is, I hope whoever the guy is that runs this business and drives this van doesn't see this video. And the other is, if you will notice later on in this video, I'll show a picture of the back of my van, and I kind of actually, just to a little bit of a degree, kind of go in this direction. Maybe this is preaching to the crowd or something, but understand a work van organization is the key. 33 years is how long it took me to learn that. I just can't explain how important it is, and here's the secret if you don't know it. Every tool should have its own specific place. On top of that, and I know you will find this very strange, being that I work for myself and have no employees, no help, I actually label where all my tools are supposed to be. What can I say? Try to be clean. Take as much out as you can once a year. Clean everything out. My old van, one time I cleaned it out, and I have to admit, it was amazing. I dug in the corners and the crevices and in the shelves over 5 gallons of soot out. One of the things I want to talk about briefly is addictions, or the potential for being addicted to things. I thought for years that I did not have an addictive personality, and then one day it dawned on me that I did. I guess you could say that I'm addicted to Milwaukee 18-bolt cordless tools because in my van is over 25 of them. Well, when I'm not at work, there are three things that I really like. Um, and I think you can kind of see what they might be. It's really interesting that the government has a bureau just for those three things. I will say that after having the big one back in 2019, I did stop cooking bacon by the pound. All right. Let's get back to work, and specifically the work vehicle and the front part of it. You need to be comfortable and you need to be safe. One of the things a lot of chimney sweeps don't recognize is the most dangerous thing we do every day is drive to and from the job. Statistically, that's just a fact. Navigation is very important. If you have an employee, they need to be watching and checking where you need to go. Here is my employee, Beauregard, and he does a good job at that. Now we'll talk about a GPS. When I first started in this business back in '83, there was no such thing as a GPS. You made an appointment with a customer and then you got directions to their house, which took usually another 5 or 10 minutes. Had a guy one time give me directions, which was you went through town and turned right on a road and went a ways and turned left at the Baptist church, and his house was down on the right. After driving around for about 30 minutes, I came back to town to look for a payphone because also back then there was no such thing as a cell phone. And when I got him on the phone, what I discovered was a ways was 7 miles and it was the Third Baptist Church I was supposed to turn at. We won't even get into the little old lady that told me to go into town and turn where the Ford dealership used to be, and when I got down to where the National Guard Armory used to be, I should turn there also. GPSs will save you. You will find out in this video in a little while that also if you get one, they have them that actually have a dash camera built into the GPS, and an interesting thing happened with mine. My GPS not only has a dash camera, it has a backup camera, which that is another thing that is an imperative, I think, in a work vehicle, especially a van. Here comes another disclaimer. I'm not one to teach about office stuff. Go back to Jerry Eisenhower and stuff and learn how to run the office. I'm not a good businessman. I will say that organization is the key, and I don't think I'm very organized. This picture was actually taken the day before I did the live presentation, and I just had to put it in there as a joke, sort of asking people to try to count the number of computers and monitors that they can see in that picture. I'll explain it in just a second. One of the things of working for yourself and being your own boss is you can probably acquire more than you should. Actually, in my office, there are 3 computers, 6 monitors, and 4 printers, all for just one lone wolf chimney sweep. But a few pointers on the office. Listen to what the customer wants. Write down what the customer wants. I know that sounds strange, but Jerry Eisenhower taught me that. Especially if you have multiple employees, it's easy to drive up to somebody's house and just assume what they want. And when you get to the house, and I'll repeat this again later on, you need to go over what the customer wants again. But also keep in mind that the average homeowner does not have a clue about their chimney. Unfortunately, at least in the South, Southern men think they know everything there is about wood burning in chimneys, but the customer usually doesn't really have a clue. I personally don't believe in asking a lot of questions on the phone, But that's me, because what happens is the more answers I get, the more I assume, and then when I get to the house, I find out that I was wrong. But here's a phone sales technique that I learned from Dale Howard. You be polite, but you keep the customer on the phone asking them questions. Now here's how it works. When someone is looking for a chimney sweep, subconsciously they have actually given themselves a certain amount of time to search out and find the chimney sweep. Now, of course, they have all kinds of things that they think that are important, but one of those things is actually just finding somebody and not wasting their time. If you actually use up the customer's time, then they'll hire you. It's that simple. Now I'm going to tell you the dirty little secret about this business. That picture is of Left Coast Hans and Paul Hempel. There's actually two things going on here. One is that late one night in a bar, a bunch of us were sitting around and we were talking about all the different ways to sweep a chimney, get as much soot out as possible, and all this technical stuff. And we were kind of burned out and etc. And Paul Hempel quietly explained something to us. And it's the secret of being a successful chimney sweep. He said, there's only two things you have to do to be successful in this business. He said, show up on time and don't pee in the corner. Now I'm going to tell you something I actually learned from Hans, who's now gone. Hans ran a successful business in a small town in California, and his main part of his business was actually doing realty inspections. That's how he made all his money, basically, which sounds crazy. Everybody thinks the big profit thing is aftermarket sales and repairs, but I have a chimney sweep friend up in Vermont, Ian Conway, that figured out that he actually made his profit just from sweeping chimneys. At my point in life, I'm actually pretty much only inspecting chimneys. And believe me, it's lucrative and it works. Hans did that, and what he did was he went down to the little local cafe every morning and sat there, and the realtor showed up and gave him a list of houses he needed to go look at. And just look, and then write a report and send it to him. Think about it. Okay, here it comes. The most important advice I can give any chimney sweep or any chimney sweep company or any employee, and that is, when you are at a customer's house, you be here now. And what I mean by that is that's all you concentrate on is the job at hand. You don't worry about the next job. You don't worry about what's going on at home. You don't worry about what's going to happen the rest of the day. You only concentrate on what you need to do there. We're fixing to go into some really deep stuff, and it's going to hurt. I hate to tell you, but you'll cringe in just a little while. But my first van had that written on the bumper, and then 35 years later, one morning, I missed it. My new van, current van, now has the same thing on it, and I am reminded every day of this very important standard operating procedure rule. Believe me, it is probably the most important thing you need to know. I'll give you a little background information. Back in about 2018, in the busy season, I realized that I no longer needed to do chimney restoration. I didn't have any employees, and it was just really crazy to try to find somebody to help you, and so I wasn't going to do anymore. But I have a realtor that sends me a lot of inspections, and she bought a house in the hysterical part of town, and I went out and looked at it, and it needed major restoration. It was unlined, needed liners for the two fireplaces, one down and one up, and also the chimney above the roof needed to be rebuilt. And for some crazy reason, she talked me into doing it all by myself. Now, on April 10th, 2019, I had actually rebuilt this chimney from the roof up, put the two liners in, and was just about 1 day away from finishing. All I needed to do was put the top ceiling dampers on, the full-size rain cap, and take the scaffolding down. And then it was time to get paid. So it's 5:55 in the afternoon. I'm done with this thing. I actually need to put a full-size rain cap on another house on the way home, running a little late because I really needed the money because the next week was a national convention in Norfolk and my wife and I were headed that way. And at 5:55, where that arrow is pointing, I actually had a thought as I came down the ladder. Well, I haven't had one of those episodes today. And let me explain to you what the episode was. The episode was that I got this pressure on my chest. Best way to explain it is if you laid on the ground and someone gently laid a concrete block on your chest, that's what it felt like. But at the same time, I had no energy. I would actually have to sit down. Couldn't even stand up. In fact, the day before, I'd actually laid down in the front yard of this house for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I finally got over it. But I was really happy coming down that ladder that I hadn't had one of those episodes that day. We won't even talk about the stupid bug man that parked right there, where if I dropped anything off that scaffolding, it was going to bounce off the porch roof and hit his truck. So I drive up to this house at 6:08 to put a rain cap on and get paid and get home, which is not very far away. And it hit me. And it didn't go away, no matter what I did. I've only got a before picture of this chimney that I was putting the rain cap on because I didn't take the time to take an after picture. Here's the best way I can explain it. I had 6 holes drilled in the outside mount rain cap and I was putting Tapcons in, and when I got around to the back to put the 6th Tapcon in, I could not line up the Tapcon in the impact driver and pull the trigger at the same time. I literally laid down on that roof for over 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do, and finally got up enough strength to jump up, put that last Tapcon in, grab all my tools, slide down the ladder, throw the tools, which were all in a bucket in the van, grab the ladder, put it on top, and take off. Here's part of the funny part of the story. I got home, yelled my wife's name. She came downstairs in my office to see what was going on, and I said the stupidest thing I've ever said to her in my life, and that means a lot. I said, I think I might be having a heart attack. I'll need to lay down for about 5 or 10 minutes and see if I feel any better. She looked at me and reached over and picked up the phone and dialed 911. I'm amazed at technical stuff and people that really know their job. And here's one of my jokes the next day where I was in cardiac ICU. I said, you know your life has changed when 3 EMTs push the gurney as fast as they possibly can through the ER doors, and they don't even get you in the back to a room. You're in the hallway, and then a guy with the world's sharpest scissors spends less than 20 seconds and cuts all your clothes off. What the experts determined was that my main artery was blocked 100% for over 2 hours. There is actually a way that that can happen and you not die, but I strongly suggest you don't let that happen. It took only 65 minutes from the time my wife dialed 911 for my cardiac surgeon to report that the stent was in and the artery was back open. I still to this day can't believe it, but believe one thing for sure, I was only along for the ride. I wasn't helping one bit. Okay, if you're squeamish or don't like certain little things, then cover your eyes and your ears for about 10 seconds. It's really not that bad, but you know, everybody's different. Immediately after they put the stent in up through my femoral artery, they put in what's called a temporary impeller, which is the world's smallest pump up near your heart, and it actually gives you blood pressure and allows your heart to rest for a day or two. They also give you a blood thinner intravenously that makes your blood so thin that your kidneys can't filter it, and you basically urinate blood. And it doesn't come out red, it comes out black. And that freaked me out. Of course, now thinking about it, a chimney sweep peeing black is kind of appropriate, isn't it? I have to laugh. So, 7 months later, and let's get back to house and the whole principle of be here now. It's first thing Monday morning, November 18th, and I have scheduled at least one job too many that day. And none of them are really close together. And I go to this house. Here's the anomaly. I had actually been to this duplex condo 6 years before and written up the chase pan, which was badly rusted. From the ground, I could see that it was still rusted. The point is, there was no reason for me to go up there other than to prove my job to the customer, which is a silly thing to do. And we'll find out how silly in just a moment. Whether it's good or bad, here's one of the benefits of having a dash camera in your van. It never happens, but I actually parked so that my dash camera on my GPS actually filmed the following. Be advised or know that I've actually cut some of it so that it's not as long as it would have been. You'll notice that when I put the ladders up and stuff that there's a little jump ahead. I actually may talk over this as we go along. See, I'm pulling up in the side of this condominium. The interesting thing is I couldn't quite figure out if that was the front door or the side door. There actually is no front door. So I kind of look around the corner to see if I'm at the right spot. I rang the doorbell. Now notice I stepped back. We need to talk about that sometime. But it's a lot of things that were driven into me. And that's my dog Beauregard barking because the lady's opening the front door and he wants to be let out and fed. And I'm talking to the lady and we're making her comfortable before I go in the house to look at her prefab fireplace, which they wonder if it needs sweeping. And then it jumps ahead if you actually looked at the time clock. There it went. I'm back outside. Then I have to pet the cat. It actually belongs next door. And then it's time to do one of the stupidest things I've ever done in my career as a chimney sweep, which is put ladders up and go up on the roof of this house. That ladder is not really quite at that angle because of the wide angle lens on the dash camera. And there I go up, you see, and I'm carrying another ladder up to this porch roof. Now what I'm pointing out is everybody will note the technical mistakes I made, but the first mistake I made, and I promise you at this point in time I'm actually thinking about the 4 other jobs I have scheduled that day with about a 20 or 30 minute drive between several of them. I've always thought about falling off a ladder, but it did not happen the way I thought it would. I actually go up and measure this cap and take pictures and then start to come back down. There it is. If you actually look at that, look at where my foot is right there. I'm actually head first at that point in time, and my foot caught on the rung. Let's get away from that. What I was saying was my foot caught on the rung and it flipped me sideways and I landed flat on my back, which is probably why I'm still alive today, or at least not paralyzed. Let's get to something a whole lot better that's gone on in the last 38 years of my chimney sweep career, and that is the people I have met and the friends I have made. Believe me, that is the one thing missing when we don't have an actual convention where people can get together. Um, this has just been really scary, this doggone COVID thing. It's the only thing that has affected me, is not being able to meet with my friends who are chimney sweeps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about some of my best friends who are chimney sweeps. And I'm going to apologize because I'm probably going to leave some folks out. So don't feel bad about it, because we do need to kind of be more distinct here, or succinct, or whatever that word is, and get this thing over with. I had the honor to know Pete Luter for many years and call him a friend. Um, he did more for the National Chimney Sweep Guild and the chimney sweep industry that can ever be explained. He actually started the Chimney Safety Institute of America and the sweep school even before that. Pete was a unique individual. He was overqualified to be a chimney sweep. Now, there's a joke in that I'll have to tell you late one night in a bar or something. But believe me, Pete was an interesting individual. Not only was Pete a great chimney sweep, he was also a great inventor, and of course started selling row clean and all that kind of stuff. But another thing that Pete was is he was always a child. He loved to play, and if he could find something that was fun, it was just unbelievable. There's a long story about that picture to the right, but believe me, that was an amazing experience. It was a long day, but that is actually on what I call the Gatlinburg of Poland. We took like a 4-hour bus ride to get to this place so we could go up this tram car to the top of this mountain and ride on these little sled cars. Anyway, that was Pete. Pete actually led myself and my wife and about 6 other chimney sweeps around Europe back in 2008 for 3 weeks. And it was an experience I will never forget. Of course, Pete is gone now. One of the things he really enjoyed doing was skydiving, and on about his 3,000th dive, his chute failed to open properly. God bless Pete Luter. I look forward to seeing him again. Another sweep that is responsible for where we are right now is Lucky Dale. I apologize. I didn't really have time in this getting this presentation together to find decent pictures of Lucky, but that's him and his son Dion back in the early 80s. Lucky taught me one key thing, and that is you can fix the chimney. It can be done. He did things that just were amazing. He also was a storyteller and just an unbelievable individual. Man was so smart, it was unbelievable. He was also a collector. If you ever get a chance, find the book Cottage Named Joy. I'll have to look that up. Written by 2 guys who moved to Aiken, South Carolina and bought a mansion, 22,000 square feet, and hired Lucky to restore the chimneys. He has a whole chapter in the book, and it's an amazing thing. He was called the Grand Acquisitor. Anyway, Lucky collected stuff. One of the things he collected was albums, and when he died, his collection was over 2.5 million. If you can find this book, which the title is actually On a Street Called Easy in a Cottage Called Joy, written by Gregory White Smith and Stephen Nafer, buy one. The chapter on Lucky Dale is well worth it. If you don't know Ron Rust and you haven't spent time with him, then you're missing out. Ron Rust is the best business manager I have ever met and a premier salesman. He'll only sell you what you need, but he will sell it to you. I've known Ron all my chimney sweep life, and one of the things about these friends of mine that I'm mentioning is not only do I admire them, but I feel like maybe if I hang out with them, a little bit of them will rub off on me. I got to tell a story about Ron, so here it comes. It was a convention in Myrtle Beach, the National Convention in Myrtle Beach, and they had given the South Carolina Guild a booth, and we were trying to raise some money, and so we were raffling off a DeWalt cordless, tool kit. And a fellow sweep, was coming down the aisle, and he looked and saw that I was selling tickets, and I could tell by his body language he wasn't interested. He tried to move to the other side of the aisle and get past us, and somebody bumped him or something, and he had to turn around and introduce himself or look at me, and I introduced myself, and I gave him my spiel of we were selling raffle tickets, $1 a piece, 5 for $5, or he could get like 25 for $20. And he wasn't interested. I mean, and we talked for a minute. And Ron Rust was also in the booth. And then somebody I knew walked up behind the guy, and I started talking to him, and the guy started to leave. Well, Ron Rust put out his hand and shook hands with this guy who would not buy any raffle tickets. Well, I talked to my friend, whoever that was. It might have been Steve Ackman or somebody, it seems like. And about 2 or 3 or 5 minutes later, I broke away from my conversation and turned, and the guy who would not buy one raffle ticket from me was handing Ron Rust a $50 bill. What more can I say? Oh, I know what I need to say. This is Ron at one of our gatherings, South Carolina Chimney Sweep gatherings, and he's holding up a quilt that was made by Esther Urban for us to auction off. Thank you, Urbans. Y'all have done a lot for the chimney sweep industry too. Tom is really a cool guy, and Esther too, man. Lord, we used to all be members of what was called the Hang Tight Club back in the old days. There was a time back in the old days in South Carolina when we had like 4 Rons in the guild and passed a resolution that nobody named Ron could become a member unless we lost one or something. Anyway, there's Ron Rust on the left. There's Ronnie Brigman on the right. They're actually looking up inside a fireplace that they had volunteered to restore the chimney for me about 4 months after I had my massive heart attack. Now we're going to talk about Ronnie Brigman for just a moment. I would suggest that you don't do this, but anyway, Ronnie doesn't weigh quite as much as me. That's actually Ronnie up there trying to secure the far corner on a full-size rain cap. To this day, I can't believe I actually stood there and watched him do that, but he did. I used to say that Ronnie was the best firebox builder in the Southeast, but in all honesty, I think that was cutting him short. Ronnie and I actually went out and looked at a big mansion a couple months ago, and this is us stopped on the side of the road. We had to stop, mainly because we were picking up something for supper that night. One of the things that people don't realize, and I'm going to admit it here on this video, is I actually have a time machine, and I've gone ahead 15 years, and here's a picture of Ronnie 15 years from now. Obviously not really. That was a picture of Popcorn Sutton, who is one of my heroes. He's gone now, but if you ever get a chance, do some research, find out about Popcorn Sutton. He should have been a chimney sweep because he was actually real, and he didn't cut any slack with anybody, and he'd tell you what he thought. And if you ever get a chance to watch the documentary, the last one, it's well worth it. I am truly amazed and humbled at the people that have allowed me to be their friends. This is Jay Walker, past president of the National Chimney Sweep Guild. Way back, I think in the 90s, we actually drafted him into helping the Southeast Convention. What can I say about Jay? Um, we've been friends for so long, it's just kind of scary. I will tell you this. 2 days after I had my heart attack, I'm laying in cardiac ICU, and in walks Jay Walker. He drove 400 miles for 6 hours because he couldn't stand it and had to come see me. And he gave me a gift, which I'll show you in just a minute. I need to take a breath for a second. That's Jay and his wife Candy and one of his dogs, Ember, at one of our gatherings here in South Carolina down on Lake Murray. This is what Jay gave me when he came to my hospital room, because like I said, he couldn't stand it and he had to drive up and see me. It's golf ball epoxy to a little piece of rock. The rock is actually from the White House. It's a piece that when they were repairing the White House, they took off. That's a whole nother long story about White House stuff. But anyway, one of the things I'm proud of, I can't say for absolute, that I actually helped get Jay to be part of the White House team. Jay is one of the people that convinced me that I needed to join a mixed up group. Probably one of the best things the National Chimney Sweep Guild did was to come up with the mixed group idea, which I never actually officially joined, but somehow in some convoluted way I did get to join what I call our mixed up group. Here's a picture of myself on the left, Jay Walker in the middle, and another chimney sweep that we're going to talk about, Bob Precinct. This is at our mixed up group where we meet out in the desert of Nevada. There's Bob Gunny Precinct. I just call him Bob now. A few years back at either the first or the second Orlando convention, we were sitting up late at night talking, and Bob told his story about becoming a chimney sweep after retiring from the Marine Corps of 20 years. And he had bought a chimney sweep company in North Carolina and needed to get certified and came down to Myrtle Beach to take the test at the convention at Myrtle Beach. And actually roomed with me and allowed me to tutor him the night before the study session and the test, because I was an old veteran chimney sweep and I sort of kind of knew it all, or something like that, which I have to laugh at. Now, the punchline to this whole story was, then he explained that that was almost 20 years ago that he had bought that business and decided to get certified. And I'll tell you what, my mouth dropped open and I almost fell out of the chair when I found out it had been that long. Now, I have to say that Bob taught me something. That's an understatement. One of my goals in the chimney sweep business for years was to become a CSIA instructor. And many number of years ago, I realized that that was not going to happen. The CSIA hired, or whatever you want to call it, both Paul Anderson and Bob at about the same time to be instructors. And I was a little dismayed that I was passed by. But I went to a seminar that Bob put on, and I found out, you know what? There are people better at things than I will ever be. And I'll tell you what, Bob teaching a class is one of those things. Oh, by the way, as you can see, I've already shown the other picture. Bob, Jay Walker, and myself, as well as Randy Brooks and a number of other chimney sweeps, are in our mixed up group that would meet out in Nevada once a year. Speaking of being mixed up in a mixed up group, here's a picture of Bob Precinct showing Renee Brigman how to be happy. Let's talk about the last person I will actually highlight so much in this Friends thing, and that's Renee Brigman. She, I was going to say, is a sister I never had, but she's actually the sister I do have. What a lot of people don't know about Renee is that for years she basically ran the Southeast Chimney Sweep Convention. One of the side stories is, and I will always remember and cherish this, is when I was laying in cardiac ICU, Renee also showed up. And because that day I had the heart attack, I'd been laying brick, and they were old brick with coal soot on them, and I was so lazy I didn't go down and get a pair of nitrile gloves to put on, and my hands had coal soot on them. She washed my hands for me while I was laying flat on my back, hooked up to about 5 IVs, and the impellers pumping away inside of me just to make me feel better. This is one of my favorite pictures of two of my best friends. What else can I say? I don't have a whole lot of friends, but most of them I have made by being in the chimney sweep industry. Judd Berg, Victor M. Garden, who knows, man. But there are small cliques, I will call them, little secret societies, we'll even say, just to put ourselves on a pedestal, that often only get together like at the national convention. I think most people that have been for a number of years know about the Friends of Don, which is really run and controlled by the supreme potentate Judd Berg there. Anyway, it's just fun to think about these things. Here's another one of those things. Southeast Convention, I believe 2003, Panama City. We are headed to run that convention. We're a day ahead. Jay Walker talks us in on the way to stopping at a skeet range, and he and Jerry Neal, that's the guy on the far left, decide to kill some poor little innocent skeets. And so myself, I made the signs. Going from left to right, Jerry Neal, Jay Walker with the shotguns, and then there's my wife, Linda Morton, there's Pete Luter, there's Pete Luter's wife, Miss Emily, and then there's Karen Duke and Mike Duke, and that group was protesting the terrible skeet slaughter that was going on. Just fun stuff that has happened over the years. Put in another plug for state associations, and a big thank you to someone who doesn't even have a clue, and that's Jimmy Buffett. It's another one of those long stories we'll have to wait until later to tell, but Jimmy saved us, and this is how he saved us inadvertently. When he owned Margaritaville, his partner was a woman named Sunshine Smith, and she bought an old historic house here in South Carolina, and we in the South Carolina Chimney Sweep Guild got together and went down and restored the chimneys in that house, and that's a picture of us during that restoration. The lady to the right on the porch in the red sweater is Sunshine Smith, and she is a really neat and unique individual. I enjoyed meeting her. One day I hope to meet Jimmy Buffett, because he did us a great favor by singing his songs. In fact, I wish I could show you the ringtone on my phone I've had for the last 5 years. I'll do that in a little while. Oh, what the heck. Now the problem is, if I put this video on YouTube, this is going to be a copyright violation. But anyway, for the last 5 years, This has been my ringtone on my cell phone.
I must confess, I could use some rest. I can't run at this pace very long. Yes, it's quite insane. I think it hurts the brain, but it cleans me out, then I can go on.
Thank you, Jimmy. We here in South Carolina for years met in August and then early September at Lucky Dale's farm over in North Augusta. And when he passed, Herb Fulmer took over and we moved over to Lake Murray just north of Columbia and have had what we now call the Gathering there for a number of years. And anybody and everybody is invited to join us because we have a good time. There's a little bit of learning there, but there's a whole lot more of just kicking back and relaxing and enjoying ourselves. We'll take a few little pictures of the whole thing at the gathering. Top left is Tom Doty flipping scrambled eggs. To the right is Chris Pryor stirring Renee Brigman's famous sausage gravy. And bottom left is Ron Rust and Drew Stein selling that wonderful quilt that Esther Urban had made for us. That's Stewart of Savored Systems and Chris Pryor showing the concrete slab they had cast for a crown and how it was free floating and not attached to anything the way they're supposed to be made. There's a lot of just sitting back and relaxing and having a good time. Guys just telling war stories and playing music and hanging out. What can you say? We're in South Carolina. We have to have a fireworks display. Little piddly me for years tried to put it on, and then they decided to pass it on to Tom Doty and Buck Owens from Florida, who do a little bit better job than I did. Somehow it evolved to we actually have a float that goes out in the middle of the lake to set the fireworks off on, and to be able to get all the fireworks that Doty and Buck Taylor stringed together, they had to build a barge 8 feet by 14 feet or so to hold them all. Oh, I also have to mention Herb Fulmer decided when we first got down there years ago, a year or 3 later, he decided that we needed a pizza oven. And so we started building it. And I think we worked on it for about 8 years and never could get it complete. And then COVID-19 came around and we canceled last year's gathering. But what happened was a few of us got together and went down there for a couple days and actually realistically finished Herb's pizza oven. And I'm proud of that. And when we're talking about the gathering, we also have to mention the stump shoot, which started back at Lucky Dale's. It's another one of those long stories. But anyway, we go out on Herb's farm way back in the woods on a gun range that he built and fire off a few small weapons. Well, we have to put a plug in again for the National Chimney Sweep Guild Convention. That was Louisville, I believe, and it was the 40th one. And once again, to say at conventions, you get to meet some of the finest people and hang out with them and at the same time learn some stuff. And if you're so inclined, you drink some tequila and just BS. But that getting together at a national convention can evolve into something even better or bigger, which is like a mixed up group. That's all chimney sweeps there. And of course, that's a group picture in Portland. I enjoyed Portland myself. That was a fun place. My wife and I actually took 2 weeks after the Portland convention. We went up into Washington State and just kind of tootled around. But anyway, we're about finished with this whole thing, so let's just kind of transmogrify on into the conclusion. This thing has gone on so long. I think I explained that this is actually me dressed up at the Panama City Southeast Convention as Pancho. Um, that's one of my favorite pictures of myself. But here's another one. Like my friend Jay Walker, I always fantasized that in the past I would have been a mountain man. When COVID came around and everybody was scrambling to try to figure out what to do, um, my neighbors wanted to have a social distancing meeting, and so I went out and got dressed up, and this is how I showed up at the social distance meeting, because I sure didn't want to get Chinese cooties. I have to tell you that as far as I can remember, the only time I've ever worn a top hat was at chimney sweep funerals. The picture on the right is of me a number of years ago in a chimney restoration job where I had had to breach the exterior of the chimney, and I was trying to take out the lower 5 or 6 feet of clay flue liners, and a brick came loose up above me about 15 feet above, never hit the side of the inside of the chimney, came straight down and hit me in the back of the head. The reason for the head sock and the bandana is that was to stop the bleeding so I could get back to work. In conclusion, I have to tell you it's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed the last 38 years of my chimney sweep career and all the people I've met and all the folks that have allowed me to be their friends. And as always, sweeps luck.